Jesus. Leave it to the Biden administration to try to figure out a way to crucify Bitcoin's evil.
My first thought is maybe it's not really about the taxes. Maybe there's something more to this story.
Roger Ver is not actually guilty by the letter of the law.
He did everything he possibly could to comply.
So they're using the tax system as a form of lawfare. As an example, don't you dare innovate.
Anybody knows what it's like to be a victim of lawfare. It's Trump.
Donald Trump. A pardon of Roger Ver would send a very powerful message. And if you want to make America great again, you need people like Roger.
We should be proud of our country. We should keep our best and our brightest. We shouldn't be chasing them out.
That's the stuff that all the propaganda wants you to believe goes on in Russia all the time.
Look at the evaluation of Mar-a-Lago case. Look at the New York cases. Look at the DC cases. Trump, you understand lawfare. People in this administration have a sensitivity to this and an awareness of this issue that has never been present in the executive branch before.
I feel like we're undergoing an emancipation from the financial terrorism that has so oppressed our best minds.
We want to see President Trump get rid of the lawfare as he was once victim of. A pardon, lifting of charges, whatever it takes. It's time to free Roger.
Roger, Godspeed.
I want Donald Trump to issue a pardon for this man. Free Roger now.
In 3.5 years, the current administration has waged a war on crypto and Bitcoin like nobody's ever seen before. It has to stop, and it has to stop.
Good afternoon. My name's Aaron Day, and I'm here to talk about my friend and the person who I think is probably the most effective liberty activist and one of the most effective people in the world at spreading peer-to-peer digital cash for the world, which is Roger Ver. The stakes are really high. I don't know, how many of you are familiar with Roger's case? Some of you, not all of you. Roger's facing 109 years in federal prison. He's facing 109 years for actually paying his taxes, and I'll go into the details on this. This is a very high-stakes situation. Roger was arrested in April in Spain, and he was thrown into the same prison as John McAfee. If you're familiar with McAfee, McAfee was also arrested in Spain, spent 244 days in Spain fighting extradition. And within 24 hours of losing his last appeal, he was found dead. Roger has been in Spain for 271 days, 9 months. And we expect him to be arrested and extradited to the United States as soon as today. So this is a big deal. And I want to explain why I'm here. And probably most of you, I know a few of you know me. My name's Aaron Day. For the last 2.5 years, I have been singularly focused on warning people about CBDCs, and in particular, warning people about Joe Biden's Executive Order 14067. Joe Biden signed this executive order on March the 9th, 2022, and it authorized the United States government to pursue a CBDC, and it also authorized a whole-of-government crackdown on the cryptocurrency industry. Once I realized what was going on with CBDCs in this executive order, I stopped everything that I was doing. I wrote a book called The Final Countdown, which I don't recommend you buy. It's completely out of date as of this week. I ran for President of the United States as a Republican just to raise awareness of this issue. I spoke with Vivek Ramaswamy. He read my book. I had 3 conversations with him about it. I'm from New Hampshire, and I actually pushed him on this, and it was one of the things that caused him to kind of push Trump to come out against CBDCs during the New Hampshire Republican primary. This issue is critical. And when I say it's a whole-of-government crackdown, I mean a whole-of-government crackdown. It's not just the IRS. Everything that we've seen with the SEC, over 127 enforcement actions, the DOJ going after people for coin mixing services for Bitcoin, the IRS, which has been not only targeting people like Roger, or even today we learned, maybe, I don't know if this is confirmed, but Michael Saylor may have an issue with unrealized gains. They're now deploying AI. They're now requiring us to self-report our crypto holdings. We're talking about, as part of this whole of government crackdown, the debanking that has been going on. and the actions of the FDIC. We're talking about the Treasury Department and the $4 billion settlement with Binance, which is the largest single settlement in the history of the United States Treasury. So I want to take a step back. I met Roger in 2012, but before that, I met a guy named Ian Freeman. Ian Freeman, you may not be familiar with him. He is the co-host of a radio show called Free Talk Live. Ian is currently in federal prison for 8 years for selling Bitcoin without a license. The federal government sent in moles, they sent in people to work on entrapment. They were actually originally seeking 40 years. All Ian did was operate a Bitcoin ATMs, but because he was a vocal libertarian spokesman, he was targeted. And for years, the federal government spent money trying to set him up. Roger learned about Bitcoin in 2010 from Ian Freeman. So I asked Roger, when my wife and I went to Ian's sentencing hearing, to promote Ian's sentencing hearing. And Roger sent out the tweet, "The man who first told me about Bitcoin is about to be sentenced to federal prison for victimless crimes. If you're in New Hampshire, please show up in person and support him today." Well, we went to that hearing. It was very clear the DOJ was fabricating evidence. They were very selective with the evidence. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. And I will say, this isn't about Ian, but I encourage you to visit freeiannow.org because Ian is appealing his case, and Ian has a hearing on February the 5th in Boston. But understand, this is somebody that sold Bitcoin, had an opinion letter from an attorney stating that it was legal to sell Bitcoin. This man committed no crime. There was very specific targeting because of his political beliefs. Roger is in the exact same position. Just 7 months after Ian was sentenced to prison for 8 years, Roger was arrested and thrown into, the same prison that John McAfee was in. And I want to give you a little timeline on Roger because this is all very politically motivated. Roger has been a libertarian for a long time. He ran for political office in Silicon Valley in California as a libertarian. He spoke out against the ATF for what they did murdering children at Waco. He spoke out against central banks. And he was arrested for selling fireworks without a license. These were fireworks through the mail. These were fireworks that other people were selling. Cabela's, the mail order catalog, also sold it. Roger's the only person in the United States ever to go to prison for selling this particular firework. It was because of his political beliefs. While he was in prison, he was emotionally tortured by the prison guards. And when he got out, he said, "I'm not safe in the United States. I need to go somewhere else." So he left. He moved to Japan, but he couldn't get official domicile anywhere, and then got involved in Bitcoin. He learned about Bitcoin in 2010, and if you're not aware, he earned the nickname Bitcoin Jesus. And he earned this nickname because he was the first retailer to take Bitcoin. He was the first investor in the Bitcoin ecosystem. He invested in Bitcoin.com, which I know is here at this event. He was the first investor in Kraken. He was the first investor in XRP. He's invested in dozens of cryptocurrency projects. And his entire mission, the entire time I've known him, and from the first time I saw him speak in New Hampshire at a Free State Project event, his mission was to spread peer-to-peer digital cash for the world as a way to stop central bank tyranny, a way to stop all of the senseless wars, and a way to stop the poverty that happens through the broken central banking system. And he has remained steadfast about that to this day. So he started his path in Bitcoin. In 2014, he finally secured citizenship in St. Kitts, filed taxes. He expatriated. When you expatriate, you have to pay an exit tax, which part of that is also potentially unconstitutional. And then all of a sudden, he was targeted by the IRS. Now, Roger is a very smart man. He knew, because of his previous experience with the federal government with the fireworks case, that he needed to dot all of his I's, cross all of his T's in leaving the United States. So he hired the best lawyers, best accountants, And even said when he was given advice that says, well, hey, you may be able to shave off here, he's like, listen, they're going to come after me. Let's make sure this is clean. So he paid his exit taxes, thought everything was fine, and then all of a sudden, in 2018, the IRS began to intervene and investigate on his case. And when I say intervene and investigate, they sent armed IRS agents into his attorney's office and raided his confidential attorney-client documents, which, by the way, is a gross violation and one of the sacred rights that we have as American citizens. Nevertheless, the documents that they obtained illegally, unconstitutionally, actually showed that Roger was complying with the IRS. Now, several years actually elapse, and nothing is going on with this case. And you have to understand, these taxes go back to 2014. Now, I don't know how many of you have been in crypto since 2014, but in 2014, if you talk to an accountant, if you talk to 10 different accountants, you get 10 different answers on how to treat Bitcoin. Is it an asset? Is it a currency? What's the right tax treatment? On top of that, 2014 was the year that Mt. Gox collapsed. And so when they do these calculations, you have to basically assess the total value of all your assets and then basically pay a tax. It's kind of an unearned, income tax in a way. Well, if Roger had sold all of his Bitcoin in 2014 based on this Mt. Gox collapse, the price would have tanked. I mean, it would have tanked to basically zero. And so anyway, he got advice and counsel on this. There was a lapse in the discussions with the IRS, and then all of a sudden last year, in April, he was arrested and apprehended in Spain. Roger actually thought the case went away. He just assumed, based on how absurd it was, that they were trying to collect some unknown amount of tax, that they just dropped the case. Now, I will tell you the reason this is of interest to me is because they decided to pick the case back up again because of Biden's Executive Order 14067. They did this with many cases where they brought back to life cases that were dead or inactive because President Biden put out an executive order calling for a rapid escalation in the regulation of cryptocurrencies. So now Roger's been in Spain for 9 months. He's in a country who doesn't speak the language, separated from friends and family during this whole situation where everything that's going on with Bitcoin. He doesn't have a voice. He can't really participate in it actively. And at any moment's notice, he could be arrested by the Spanish authorities. I mean, they could give him a letter that says, hey, we're not extraditing you, you're free. But let's face it, after 9 months, that's not looking like that's likely to be the case. So the 109 years is a ridiculous charge because, again, he paid his taxes. An example of one component of the 109 years is they're saying, well, he committed fraud, and because he filed his taxes by the mail, that's 20 years. And he sent in 3 different returns, and so that's 3 times 20, which is 60 years. And this is an obscene situation. And by the way, in all this time, there's been no opportunity to settle the case. So here are the implications for this. And I know some people might disagree with Roger and his stance on Bitcoin. This isn't about Bitcoin or anything related to block size or any of that. This case is about, 1, loss of attorney-client privilege. If they win here, this means that the IRS can just storm in and steal anybody's confidential documents. It means you can no longer rely upon your attorneys and your accountants for advice, because they might come in and retroactively say, oh, you followed this advice? Well, we don't agree with it. You didn't pay enough, but we're not going to tell you how much, and then we're going to threaten to throw you in jail for the rest of your life. It's the criminalization of success, and it's weaponizing the tax system. And by the way, I believe Roger should get a full pardon immediately because, thankfully, it's not all bad news. Trump actually delivered on not only freeing Ross, but on yesterday rescinding Executive Order 14067. So I think if Trump can be made aware of this case, he will actually decide to pardon Roger because this is an artifact of that executive order. I want to say a couple of quick things about Roger as a person. Crypto things aside, Roger is probably one of, if not the most substantial, influential, and largest funders of voluntarism and liberty causes. He was the largest single donor to Ross Ulbricht's legal campaign. He provided money to the Foundation for Economic Freedom. He was the co-founder and co-funder, or actually the initial funder of the Brownstone Institute. And he has donated to numerous anti-war and anti-drug war causes. And even while under arrest, he did one interview on Tucker Carlson, and he still used that as a platform to promote peer-to-peer digital cash. He promoted how you could use Xano and Confidential Layer as a way to make Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash private, as a way to solve one of the problems that we have with Bitcoin today. So I think we have a real shot at a pardon, or the DOJ could drop the case, or he could win his extradition case. And he has a hearing in LA on February the 3rd on a motion to dismiss the case. And what I'm asking you to do today is to help by going to freerogernow.org and filling out the open letter and sharing this information. Because again, I think if Trump can find out about this, I've spent a lot of time talking to Lynn Ulbricht, who I think is an absolute hero, and proof that if you persevere and you share enough love for a long enough time and you get a community behind you, that anything is possible. We can do that for Roger, but the time to do it is right now. So I urge you to go to freerogernow.org, sign the open letter, share this information, and do anything that you can to help raise awareness on this issue, because it impacts all of us. If they're able to do this to Roger, then they're going to come for all of us next. And I will say, I talked to somebody from the IRS prior to Trump winning the election. The #1 area of hiring of the 87,000 IRS agents is crypto tax enforcement. So out of self-interest, please support Roger. Thank you.